It's my pleasure to introduce today's chair, Casper Beelen, who will moderate today's discussion. Casper, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Michael, for this introduction and setting this all up. So yes, welcome everyone to the Representations of AI seminar. So as I'm Casper Beelen, I'm the technical lead at the Digital Humanities Research Hub. And I will be introducing the speakers and also chairing the session. So to get my notes, sorry. So this seminar is a series of conversations about how artificial intelligence is portrayed. So instead of only focusing on the technology itself, we are all actually interested in understanding the wider cultural, political backgrounds in which AI operates. So basically the questions we would like to ask and explore in this seminar, like how do we talk about artificial intelligence? How do we represent it? And how do we visualize this system in images, text, or other media? And today's session is titled AI Branding, Memes, and Narratives. And we would like to explore AI from a design, a communication, and a narrative, linguistic and narrative perspective. So this is mostly what we'll be hopefully discussing today. But hopefully you won't hear too much of me because we have like 4 excellent speakers in the room and who have way more knowledge about this topic than I have. So I will just try to guide the conversation, but not much more than this. And I will first introduce each speaker now. Then we have a series of questions for around 1 hour. And then we open the floor to questions from the audience. So please feel free to think about questions or put them in the chat. So our first speaker is Tania Duarte. Tania is the founder of We and AI and the coordinator of Better Images of AI. She is on the editorial board of the Springer AI and Ethics journal and also on the advisory board of the Public Engagement and Ecosystem Strategy at the Alan Turing Institute. And also besides all these positions, she's also leading the Tech for Disability working group at the Tech London Advocates. And lastly, she was also recently nominated as one of the top 100 brilliant women in AI by the Women in AI Ethics organization. Our second speaker is Valérie Schaffer. And Valérie Schaffer is a professor in contemporary history at the Center for Contemporary and Digital History at the University of Luxembourg. And she's also an associate researcher at the Center for Internet and Society at the French National Center for Scientific Research. And her research specializes in the history of computing, telecommunications, and data networks. And her main research interests are the history of the internet, the web, digital cultures, and born digital heritage. And she currently is also the principal investigator of the EV project, dedicated to the history of online virality. And then we have Nadia Piet. And Nadia is a designer and researcher with a focus on AI and machine learning, data, tech, and digital culture. And Nadia is the founder of AIX Design, and she will tell more about it soon. But just to quickly say, AIX Design is a global community of designers, researchers, creative technologists who use AI in pursuit of creativity, justice, and joy. And Nadia holds an MA in data-driven design and works as freelance or on self-initiated projects that question how we design and relate to technology. And then we have Tom Holanek. Tom is a design and technology ethics researcher with a background in cultural studies, philosophy, UX design, and communications. And currently, he's a postdoctoral research fellow at the Leverhulme Center for the Future of Intelligence at the University of Cambridge. His ongoing research explores the possibility of applying critical design methods to the governance, development, and deployment of AI systems. So I hope I quickly introduced the speakers properly. And now we will turn to the main part of the seminar, the discussion. And I think my first question is for Tania. So I already mentioned you've been working on the images of AI, better images of AI collaboration. And I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts on image representations of artificial intelligence. And especially I'd like to hear a bit more about your recent work on tropes in stock images of artificial intelligence, and what biases or representations they reinforce, and especially also maybe how this use of stock images are now also being replaced by AI generated images. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a really interesting time to be talking about any representation of AI, obviously, because there is so much hype in the media. And in terms of the last question about kind of recent developments, I will start by noting that Google Gemini launched yesterday, and I've been watching how that has been represented, and I'll come to that at the end. But I think it's a good example of how the images that we have all been used to seeing from science fiction for many years have kind of ended up with where we are now, amongst many other things. And I'm also really pleased to be with speakers talking about non-visual narratives as well, because the two are inextricably linked. I mean, you also have sonic narratives and you know, all sorts of different kinds, and it's the sum of all the parts. So when I talk about particular tropes that are unhelpful, quite often people feel that individually they're kind of not that bad, but it's this layering effect of when we see image after image after image, or it's reinforced with the story, with the words, with the headlines. And I think it's important to look at visual imagery as part of this bigger picture, because it all it influences the language and vice versa. So the work that we did at Better Images of AI started with just a group of people at the beginning of, or some way, I think, into 2021, feeling very dissatisfied with, some people were dissatisfied with their inability to find good stock images. Other people really felt very strongly that there were really negative, sexist and racist stereotypes being propagated. And some people probably, particularly the drive of We in AI, also wanted public to be able to use critical thinking better about AI, and that is absolutely not possible when you get complete fantasy pictures. There's no way of being able to understand more about AI when in fact you're being misled. So to go into the detail, we first of all made a case for the kind of images that we wanted to replace, picked up steam by getting thoughts from lots of different people working on similar projects at many universities. And it all really came together when we linked up with BBC R&D, who had the ability to build a website to actually showcase alternative images, as well as to consolidate the research that had been done from these different perspectives about the negative impacts of existing tropes. And then also with LCF5, with Leverhulme Centre for Future Intelligence, particularly Dr. Kanter Dihal, who was able to secure some funding from the AHRC via a grant to really kind of validate the research and think about what the gaps were. So presenting the kind of list of tropes that we came up with, which were 8 tropes, and I'll add a 9th that didn't quite make the report. There's a guide that got written as a result of the research, which I can drop in the chat. But the 8 that kind of made the list came from initial feelings of us saying, oh, we don't like floating brains and white robots, because what even are they when you're actually communicating about AI? But these dig down a little bit more into that, and so I can run through them quickly. So anthropomorphism is the first key obvious one, representing AI as a human-like being. We can have various scales of this, sometimes even those little 1960s friendly robots with kind of square heads. There's still a degree of kind of personification about that. But the most prevalent ones are kind of very realistic, like robots of a particular genre. The reason these are really challenging is because it really masks the agency and accountability of those behind the AI system, because they instantly sow this idea that the AI acts independently, and it obviously doesn't. And that's one of the big themes of the last year, has been this, us losing control of AI, and not thinking about the current things we can do, that we're not controlling very well about AI, and instead are looking forward to a time when rogue AI is going to be running the world. That's a very easy leap when we're starting to think that robots have free will. As soon as you anthropomorphize anything, it instantly goes into a territory of assigning gender, ethnicity, class even. I've heard Imad Mostak, the founder of Stability AI, kind of describing generative AI as kind of smart graduates. So as soon as you anthropomorphize, you're imbuing other characteristics. This robot, kind of the white robot hand, often comes into variations of the creation of Adam. So this is the second trope. So, God hand, human hand, robot hand. There are a million different variations of this. Dr. Beth Singler has written on this extensively. And what's been interesting again over the last year is seeing this kind of trope develop. So as people get excited about the prospect of writers losing their job, you now see, a hand with a pen in it reaching out to a robot hand. Sometimes the God and the human change places, and obviously it's based on the painting on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. And the problem with it is it makes AI seem unknowable, mystical, godlike, and again, no human agency or control, which is, really dangerous. Science fiction references in general prevalent. So this is trope 3. And there's some research done on how science fiction has influenced AI development, as well as the other way around. So it's kind of continuous feedback loop. We've all seen references from The Terminator, Space Odyssey, Minority Report, really come into our popular kind of understanding of visual and otherwise of AI. And it always stuns me because none of these films ended up well. They didn't go well, and yet we're really keen on reproducing technologies in this style. So that's number 4. Number 5, sorry, that was number 3. Number 4 is descending code, again from the Matrix, the kind of zeros and ones cascading down the screen, and it's kind of quite distant and alienating. It makes it feel like it's something ethereal and intangible and sinister. And quite often the code is not really that relevant to AI code at all. The color blue is a strong contender at number 5. And I should note that the poster, so the poster for this session, I think, had the kind of blue that we see if you actually Google, AI in Google Images, you're hit with a screen of blue. And there have been various critiques on the why the color blue is used so much from different angles, some from philosophy, some from kind of design. But in the global north, the color blue has been associated with progress, particularly technological progress. There's also kind of gendered connotations to it as well. Male, clinical, distant, and one researcher, Alberto Romelia, said it kind of nudges people towards acceptance and resignation. I will get on to what's happened to the colour blue since we started this project and picked up on this in a bit. Talked about anthropomorphism, specifically white robots are a real problem. They're the most common types of robots that we see. They're not just white in color, they have very kind of Western features, and it associates intelligence with being white. They're a barrier to increasing racial and ethnic diversity in AI development and decision making. They exclude the racial majority. They're clearly, very problematic. There are reasons why some white robots have developed, so in clinical environments, but you know, not the depictions that we see of armies of them typing on computers, like they need a computer, you know, laptop to type on, and, you know, wearing headsets, etc. And then men in white suits, usually holding a globe of like AI type nodes in their hands, or, you know, typing on keyboards. That's another trope which reinforces stereotypes about the kind of person who's in control of AI. It's the representation of women, of people of color in AI is really, really shockingly terrible. So this does nothing to help, especially when you think that a large amount of the AI workforce are kind of data labelers who work in global majority countries, and don't look anything like these people. This is more the people who are seen to be in control of AI, and we need to get more people, like real people, represented. Human brain, really, really common, and I can say from experience of doing, you know, lots of kind of public engagement AI, quite a lot of people actually have been led to believe that AI is like an electronic node replication of the human brain. I mean, they literally think someone's made a brain out of, you know, kind of tech stuff. So, you know, these are really damaging, and again, it's kind of misleading people into thinking that AI can do anything that a human brain can do. We've seen a lot of that in the press recently. So they're the kind of 8 main tropes. I'd also add the kind of virtual space that we sometimes see. So holograms, holographic depictions, making it look like AI is something ethereal, intangible, not something you can engage with, or you know, really exists or impacts. It's kind of in this kind of imaginary space. There are a lot of them as well. So, you know, we try and make AI more physical in our representations. So I'm sorry if I've gone on a bit too long there. I don't know if I've got time to talk about what's happened since. I may have to come back to that.
No, you can have a few minutes to talk about.
Is that okay? So I'm going to share screen because I really want to talk about Google. What I've seen since we did the project. So the project, and as I said, started 2021. We launched the library of free Creative Commons images that tried to suggest better ways of communicating AI. They are only better, you know, no one person gets to decide what's good and what's bad. We can just work together to try and find alternatives to these tropes. And it's all experimentation to some extent. And so we have seen that some people, I mean, a lot of people use our images, which is fantastic. Some people will create their own based on some of the ideas, which is also fantastic. We didn't, you know, I certainly didn't go into business to be an image library. We want to create and inspire people to make their own images and have their own thoughts. And please tell us about it if you do that. But also some people have kind of, I'm not saying it's necessarily because of our you know, our work, but they have been trying different things. But they can eliminate one trope and then just start introducing other ones which are not necessarily helpful either. And one that we've seen, I mean, it's always been around, but we've seen particularly having a resurgence at the moment, is the AI as a toddler. And I think, you know, post ChatGPT, it's been a way of people saying, oh, hang on a second, you know, don't trust AI too much. It's actually just like a toddler. And I think it used to be that people would talk about AI as a toddler to try and explain the way that machine learning works, which it doesn't, by the way. They're I'm sure we all know that, but it is like they learn differently. It's more just a shorthand for saying, oh, they try lots of different things until you know, they get it right. But what's happened now is I think it's being used almost as a caution. Like you may think it's, you know, Emad Mostak's smart graduate, but actually it's still like a toddler. Obviously, that's that's gone to the anthropomorphism. It may not be a white robot, but it's quite unhelpful. So let me see if I can just share screen. So that's one thing we've seen, and this is anecdotal. If anyone wants to do research on this, I am so up for discussing that. So sorry, let me see if I can share screen. Yeah, so yeah, this is an example here. Generative AI is a toddler. The article itself is pretty, I'll be honest, it's, yeah, VentureBeat do some great stuff. I don't think this was it. Let me, sorry, I now need to get on to the next, just work out, here we go. A counter to this, and this is, I think, why it's also really important to have wraparound resources to things. So if you ever do need to kind of use a resource which uses the toddler metaphor, wraparound resources can be good. And this is a fantastic one from the New Yorker. I think you can get like one free view, and I really encourage it, where it kind of unpicks this toddler metaphor in a really visual way. And I would, yeah, if you just kind of Google that title by Angie Wong, it's really great. And it looks at all the reasons why AI is not like a toddler at all. So that's one that we've seen more of. The other thing we've seen is people using different colors to blue, thinking that that makes it okay. Lots, we have seen more color. This is an example. This is like in 5 years' time, people, we're going to have these guys running in amongst us, but at least they're on a pink background. The other thing is, sorry, got my slides. This is what I wanted to get into. So the use of generative AI. So generative AI is doing something super interesting. It is playing with all these things and using different colors. So we've got less white robots now. We do have different colors. Orange seems to be quite a key color. AI is orange now for some reason, but it is really fascinating how whenever you now mention a tech tool and someone wants to write an article, you can get like a visual identity. So this is Grammarly. This is what Grammarly looks like. It's this kind of white robot, orange robot. It's also being used to create kind of images that, you know, build on all the kind of scary tropes. So this, I don't know if the headline was put in as a prompt, but this is where we get, and what you can see instantly is we are getting very gendered. You know, so this robot has breasts. I don't know why this robot needs breasts. You know, words fail me a little bit. Gemini. So Gemini launched yesterday. Before the launch, there were lots and lots of announcements. I think the first one, big one, was probably in about May. And since May, there have been massive amounts of videos, news articles, etc. And this is a screenshot that I did just today. Google Gemini launch, YouTube. Now, you can see instantly, anyone who doesn't know what Google Gemini, you know, really is, a large language model, you know, chatbot, you know, etc. This is what AI thinks Google Gemini is. It's female. It's very female. It's pretty, you know, in a kind of Western idealized sense. I don't think I need to say much more about the biases in generative AI, and also the danger of having stock image libraries full of absolute nonsense. But yeah, we now have this. To look specifically at some of the images, it gets even more sinister, because here, this genuinely looks like this is, you know, Sundar Pichai himself on a stage, and it looks like it comes from Google. There are hundreds of these on the internet. And I've been calling people out who share them on LinkedIn to say, oh, this is what it is. And I say, where did you get that image? Did you get it from Google? And then, you know, sometimes no one will answer, but the image disappears. But it, you know, you can see how damaging this is. And I love the fact that it's recreated the whole stage. So it's not only like an image of AI, but it's validated it with the stage with, you know, someone that looks like it might be, you know, the CEO of Microsoft. They didn't manage so well on the person on this one. I love this. This person here, haven't managed the person, but the AI looks, you know, kind of stunning. Yeah, dozens of these. So that's it. I'm sorry, I've probably gone on way too long, but I'm, as you can see, I'm like completely baffled by these. Anyone interested in research, let me know.
No, thank you so much. It was really fascinating to hear your thoughts, and like also to actually hear the visual perspective of AI, which is kind of new to me. And also there's also like the nice segue to the next question I would like to ask Valerie, because you showed this picture of the AI as a writer, generative AI as a writer, but also the AI as toddler. So, and I would like to pick up on those representations a bit more by asking Valerie the next question. So, yeah, Tanya was talking about generative AI, and so, and especially I think like the latest models, they kind of they became very good at like parroting or mimicking human-like text. And I think in academia or in the education sector, this has raised like quite fears about plagiarism. So the representation is very much represented towards this fear or maybe the loss of skills among students. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the representation of AI in educational academic from an educational academic perspective, and also maybe tell us a bit about if you see any kind of generational differences in how AI is perceived, and or maybe not by toddlers, but still by students.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Caspar. And first, I will react to Tanya's presentation very shortly, because there is also a whole history of or genealogy of representations. If you take, for example, the image of the brain, we can come back to the end of the 40s with the book by Edmund Berkeley, which was entitled Giant Brains or Machines That Think. And this idea of the giant brain or the representations of the brain, they are really transversal or going through the history of computing and then AI. Of course, there are changes. New topic, sci-fi has also influenced some representations. When you look at the last images, you can also think about Avatar and several images we have in mind. But there is also this history of representation, which is very interesting. And also, yeah, we always have the topic of revolution, which is also very interesting in the digital world. And then with AI, this word revolution, which for me is something we should probably prohibit. But in the educational world, fortunately, there is no revolution. We have always the same reaction when there is something disruptive, I would say. Of course, there are a lot of colleagues who are very interested in artificial intelligence, aware of these challenges. And notably at the University of Luxembourg, for example, we have a lot of disciplines or fields. We have computer scientists that are not so afraid of artificial intelligence, on contrary. But in academia, mostly what I saw in press coverage, for example, in France or in reactions in academia, was this fear of plagiarism, of ChatGPT helping or doing exams instead of students. And immediately there were debates and reactions about it. And it reminds me a bit about the reactions a few years ago related to Wikipedia. Exactly the same fear or the same idea that, students will become lazy, will be cheating, and so on. And some institutions took immediately or had reactions. For example, Sciences Po Paris had a big coverage related to the fact that they prohibited ChatGPT and other kind of tools in Sciences Po. And at our university also, some regulation was introduced saying, okay, it may be plagiarism, there are also rights, you can't use ChatGPT and or in a responsible way. Or what is interesting is that immediately the reaction was to say, okay, we have to warn and to threaten students, but without having the tools to react, because we must be very clear. We have, of course, some cases that's obvious, I will say, but we can't prove it because we don't have the right tools to prove it. I give you just one example. First, there were no selection of tools at the university level saying, okay, you will use this tool or this tool to check about homeworks and so on. And if you put one text within several shaker, or you will have very different results. So how do you prove and what do you select to tell a student, okay, you used ChatGPT, for example. So there is GPT-0, Detect GPT by Stanford and so on, and a lot of them are not free. And it's a way to say also, teachers, just go with it. And so now we have the feeling, the debates will probably go a bit further, move forward. But I was surprised that it was not seen as an opportunity to really raise some key questions. For example, my concern is not about students cheating. Of course, I don't like it, but about, are they equal in this kind of use of chatbots and so on? What is the business model? What is the kind of data they can provide ChatGPT and the others with? Are there cognitive inequalities? Depending of business models, there may be a cost to cheat, which is also something we should address. And a lot of these companies, they are also from the north with a lot of bias. There are trend of materials that are also reflecting a lot of bias and so on. So it was a chance to really discuss a lot of topics. This will probably come, but at this stage, I think there is a kind of narrow vision of what artificial intelligence can do to education. It is not the first controversy. I will very shortly mention the fact that, for example, at the University of Texas, from 2013 already, there was a grade algorithm that was used to select PhD students in computer science, and a lot of discussions arose in 2020 about, the bias for admissions, and the University of Texas decided to withdraw the grade system. Just to mention on this topic that, for example, UNESCO has done some reports. There was a Beijing consensus on artificial intelligence and education in 2019. Very wise report and smart report from UNESCO in 23. You can find them online. There are a few academic articles on education. One that I really like is in the European Journal of Education in 22 by Holmes and Tuomi, and they are opening a whole use of artificial intelligence in education, like intelligent tutoring system and so on. Again, in the 50s already, they were thought by Skinner, the father of behaviorism and so on, about personalization and but it's quite interesting, and it's open the debate and move beyond the case of plagiarism. And in a few words, for teenagers and their use more generally, I don't think they have this vision at all. They have a vision of a game. AI has been related deeply with gamification, and just have in mind also that artificial intelligence also entered the debates with Deep Blue in 97 and its victory in chess. Then it was AlphaGo and the victory against a Go player, the Jeopardy game that was won by an artificial intelligence in 2011, poker with Libratus in 2017. This idea of something playful with artificial intelligence, I have the feeling we can find it also with teenagers. For example, when they use character.ai that was developed, where they can also interact with characters, Harry Potter or famous actors and so on. It's mostly a relation with chatbots. So artificial intelligence is really for teenagers about chatbots. Of course, I would like to mention my AI on Snapchat. And here what was interesting is that the teenagers found it very intrusive, but you could not dismiss this my AI without having having a better not registration, but you had to pay to not have my AI, but just here to dismiss my AI, which is really interesting. And a last word, because as you said, Caspar, I'm working on memes. It's very interesting also what is happening online related to memes. Of course, you have in mind the Pope with his white coat. I'm not sure it's something which is related to teenagers. It's more related to boomers, I will say, who are inventing a new visual culture. And here we could talk, and maybe we'll talk later about this very interesting use of Midjourney, but also, how, for example, a photograph like Christopher Brown launched a project related to Cuba, which is called 90 Miles, with fake pictures related to the history of Cuba and Castro and so on. So, of course, for education, and I will end up with this, there are also some challenges related, for example, to a representation of history and so on.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, and also for bringing like a historical perspective to this debate. Like, it's not the first time this is happening, and I really like this kind of point of gamification and how maybe younger generations might have a different view, which is not about plagiarism but about play, which I maybe can pick up later. And also, it's also a nice segue maybe to the next speaker, and I would like to ask Nadia a question to also hear a bit more like the designer's perspective. And as I said in the introduction, you founded AIX Design as a global community to critically reflect on AI from, let's say, I think, alternative perspectives. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate a bit on the aims and the projects that happen within AIX Design, and also how can designers actually help us think differently about AI, like maybe detach ourselves from the already thoughts that we already have kind of internalized, and how can you help us to perceive those ideas or images differently?
Okay, this has been really fun, actually, just listening to everyone already. I'm having a great time just sitting here writing down my preferences and things people are mentioning, so that's really cool. Thank you for that opening. I'll give a brief introduction of myself and AIX Design and some of the work we've been doing. So I'm Nadia Fleet. I work mostly as a designer and researcher, exploring, like you said, culture and technology, and since 2018 focusing on AI, just because there's so much happening and so much to unpack. And AIX Design basically started as an online community at that time, because I was like, where are people that I can talk to, right? It's either I had like AI people that then didn't really like get design, or design people that didn't really get AI. And I was really looking for, I don't know, I guess a community of like-minded people to dive deeper. Couldn't find it, so I started the Slack, started like that. That was in 2018-19, and now we've sort of grown out into this decentralized, I would say, design and research studio, trying to collectively like unpack and interrogate these things, and also sort of like reimagine or design potential, alternatives or like new ways of making, designing, but also thinking about AI sort of outside the like big tech context. And I mean, a big shift for us was kind of last year, like 2022, as Tanya also mentioned, for a lot of people working in AI, the urgency and the frustration like kind of amped up at that time, because they went so mainstream, right? And it just sort of blew up. And before that, we were doing a lot of work in like, how does AI like change the design or like creative discipline, and how can also designers play a part in shaping AI. But we felt like we wanted to explore a bit more what felt really meaningful to us at that time. And we ended up, just diving more into like the ways we think about AI and technology in general. So in a way, it became a lot less designy and more philosophical, but we still make a lot, to explore these things. Yeah, and I think there's a term that I quite like about this. It's like the algorithmic imaginaries, or sort of like this idea of how do people even think of AI, like how do we conceptualize what that is, right? Both as people working in the field, but also people who don't, especially. I think it's important to kind of like democratize a level of literacy and make, I don't know, keep like critical discourse more accessible for people that don't necessarily work in like tech or academia, right? People have opinions about AI, like anyone has experiences and opinions. So I think it's really interesting to do this in more participatory ways. And yeah, then lately a lot of our thinking has also been around how do these, like, what are certain ideas that underlie, this whole AI world. So even this thing of like efficiency being, something we want to strive for, or like sort of tech solutionism, and what are the types of intelligences that we value, right? Because like that sort of shows up in AI now, but I think a lot of the problems that show up now in AI aren't really AI's problems, but they're like, problems that have been showing up, and they're just, I think to Valerie's, context around education as well. It's like, it isn't just that AI is now causing a problem in education, like maybe there's been a problem with how education is designed and structured to rely a lot on, this, what do you call that, regurgitation, like just repeating facts rather than like a deep understanding, right? And so AI is just making those things more urgent and really like sort of causing a lot of friction that forces us to investigate some of those ideas or ways we do things. So we think a lot of it also relies on questioning like those ideas. And I saw this quote that I quite like. It's like Silicon Valley's most powerful monopoly, maybe on how we perceive technology. So not just, the capital and like the power dynamics that actually we're watching like play out, but also how it has sort of, taken over like the way we can even think about technology and AI. And similarly to my context for understanding this maybe around like sort of decolonizing institutions and like actual structures, but then also like decolonize your thinking. So it's like how, what does that mean in the context of technology? Like how can we think outside of these boxes that we can sort of it's like tech is so deeply linked to certain ideologies and like capitalism. It's like, can we shake that a little bit and think about it in new ways and find new perspectives that maybe help us to then design for it in different ways, so like relate to it in different ways. So practically, like some of the projects that we've been doing in the past like months, we've actually been working with Tanya and Better Images of AI on a small set of artist commissions, which has been really fun and really interesting. So it was a collaboration between Tanya's like Better Images of AI, VNAI, from VNAX Design, where we worked with like a handful of artists to create new images. And it's been really fun because, it's like we could actually dive deeper into all the like terms that Tanya mentioned. Would be like, cool, we see this, but what's the alternative, or what would good representations of AI visually look like, and sort of digging into that, right? Which is really not easy, but it's really fun. Have been really, really interesting. So we're releasing those images soon, I believe. But we've been working on that. Another project that I'm working on at the moment with University of Rotterdam is exploring sort of like supportive design patterns for UX of AI. It's a like semi-speculative or idealistic project rather than like a sort of super practical interaction design project. But it's also starting from that notion of like, okay, we don't want deceptive design patterns, right? And we're a bit fed up with the way we're seeing some of these interfaces, you know, making it really difficult to like exercise our data rights, or, you know, sort of pigeonholing us into certain types of behavior, right? Even if they're based off our own earlier behavior, it's like, I may not want that. Like I may have, you know, different needs from the system. So this like as, you know, sort of deceptive patterns is like, what would be an opposite of that? And so the project is sort of doing speculative interfaces with people, like co-designing speculative interfaces that come from a sort of more idealistic world in which you know, these like AI interfaces would be designed in a way that we feel supported by, or like nourished, or, you know, that we feel like it's our best interest. Which is, yeah, it's fun. It's a fun speculative exploration. I just started that. It's quite pretty. But that's really fun to work on. We're doing another small project around exploring language of AI. So like which is really close, I think, to this series of conversations, right? Really looking into that representation of like what language do we use, what terms do we use, and how does that sort of shape our, you know, box, like how does the language we use around AI, obviously starting with just literally the word itself, you know, and like this notion of the artificial and intelligence, like, and how, and I saw this also like words like hallucinating, and, you know, how does all of that shape our thinking, even very simple things like correct or false, you know, which is like how we think of evaluation of AI. It's like, what does that even, you know, like, let's begin to even unpack how we just casually throw terms like that around. So we're sort of digging into that, which is amazing. Researcher called Bo. Yeah, I'm referring to a lot of stuff. If people are curious about it, you can like find us on whatever social we like to use, or our website. And it's something we're starting soon, but I've sort of been, yeah, like taking notes on the past weeks. Is a series of community research streams that sort of provoke and unpack some of these dominant ideologies. And so we want to do some really fun, explorations into sort of the following themes. So we want to look into like what slow AI might mean, right? And like not as a practical solution, but again, as like a frame to sort of begin exploring the relationship of like AI with time, right? And time also with capitalism, or like time as a resource, but also more like, I don't know, indigenous perspectives on time. And this, yeah, just the AI arms race, right? Like the pace is freaking insane. Like I have very much given up on trying to keep up with everything because it's not, you know, doable, and it's not constructive. So I'm also asking, like, how can we have, I don't know, slow thoughts about like fast technology, right? And I just spent a month doing my yoga teacher training. So that was like a very slow, right? So it's like, how can we bring some of that, like, I don't know, slow awareness into the tech space, which is, you know, always in a rush. So there's like slow AI. We want to explore like esoteric AI. I'm not sure yet if that's the right term, but it's like it's sort of framing AI as like a partial way of knowing that is helpful in some ways, right? Especially for some like, yeah, research context or ChatGPT, whatever. Like it's definitely helpful in some ways, but it's not, you know, it's not complete, it's not whole, it's not accurate, in many other ways. So kind of looking at other like partial ways of knowing, or even like more, you know, esoteric, like scrying methods, and sort of drawing parallels between that and like prediction algorithms, to see, yeah, to just, you know, probe into how we think about these things, and what other like frames of reference or points of view perspectives we could adopt. Then we want to do one that's like small or situated AI, like kind of combating this like really not helpful notion I find of like a general intelligence. Like, what is that? Even like this all-knowing like oracle that's just gonna have it all figured out. It's like that, you know, even when we look at like, I don't know, if I hired someone, I don't need them to know everything about everything. Like that's, you know, it's both unrealistic but also not helpful. You want them to have like a specific and situated and small intelligence, right? So how can we, yeah, rather than like aiming for this one big chunky AI model that somehow can do it all, how can we just create more, I don't know, specific solutions that actually help people in a specific context, right? Which is just such a different place to start from. So we're gonna explore that, also small as, you know, it doesn't have to be big data and big data centers with big ecological footprints. Like what is small, you know, tiny AI situated in a specific context look like, and how might that be helpful? And then the final one, which is so fun, is girl AI, right? So like, I don't know who's here, like, I don't know how's the Gen Z millennial boomer division. Also, sorry for like generalizing, you know, generations with platforms, but yeah, for whoever knows, like, you know, there's been this whole thing going around the web of like girl dinner, right? It's like weird shit girls eat for dinner when no one's around, like weird combos, or like girl math, like weird, you know, funny tricks that women do in their head around like their finances. So we love this. So we want to explore like girl AI. Like, what would that be, right? Not AI girls. Yeah, we don't want to see those generated like pornographic women images. We want to explore like, yeah, AI, it's such a like hyper mask space. And, you know, let's mess that up a little bit and explore what like a really girly, you know, approach to AI would be. You know, speaking with my pink background here with my purple little croissants floating around. So that's both like in aesthetic, but also in, yeah, the types of like values, right? And like sort of more feminist or soft values that we wanna bring to it. So yeah, that's just a few examples. I can ramble on, but like, let's stop there. That's an introduction of like the stuff that's swirling around my brain at the moment. And yeah, I would love to chat more about it here, everyone's thoughts on.
Thank you so much. It sounds provocative and fun at the same time. So I really enjoyed all the ideas, especially thinking about slow AI. I think I would really appreciate it sometimes. And now turning again, maybe from design more to the narrative again. My last question of the main conversations piece is dedicated to Tom. And in this, so far, we've been also quite interested in narratives. And narratives exist in many different forms. Like Valerie talked about more, I think, the academic narrative, the narrative in education, which focuses very much, for example, on plagiarism. And I would like to invite you to maybe think about this a bit more wider, like given your background in design, communication, AI, ethics, what do you see as critical differences between like various narratives about AI? And with this various narratives, I mean, like, for example, the narrative, the fictional narratives or the journalistic representations, the marketing narratives. How can these narratives be improved in their own ways, or how do you distinguish them in meaningful ways?
Yeah, thanks so much. I will try to say a bit more about what we can do, how we can respond to these different forms of narratives that are perpetuated in different ways and through different media. But maybe before I should say that, I mean, thanks so much for the 3 presentations so far, and I relate to each one of you in different ways. So I'm supposed to talk about narratives, but really I am a design person at heart, and in many ways I think I'm sitting at a similar intersection to Nadia, because my academic work is primarily focused on critical design, design theory, and how that relates to the ethics of artificial intelligence. So I teach critical approaches to human-computer interaction to computer science students, even though my background is actually very much in the humanities. And I think worth mentioning is also, before I say a bit more about how what I'm doing now relates to some of the questions that we already raised, worth mentioning is also that my first degree was actually in comparative literature. So maybe that's how I relate to the question of representations and misrepresentations of AI. And I also worked in technology marketing for an AI company. So I feel, I mean, we spoke about this with Tanya a while ago, that I feel like I have contributed to the hype at some point in my life. That was a while ago, around 7 years ago. But so at the time, AI wasn't so present in our daily lives, at least not consciously, because of course it was there. And then I also worked in user experience research. So this is just a bit about my background. And now, yes, so how do I relate to the question of misrepresentations, and how we can maybe talk about different kinds of narratives, different sorts of narratives, and how we can respond differently to problematic narratives. So let me start, going back to fictional narratives, and I will refer here to some of the work that we are doing collectively at the center, and in particular to the work of some of my colleagues. Tanya already mentioned Kanta Dihal. Kanta and Stephen, together with Sarah Dillon, to those of you who might not know this, led a project called AI Narratives a few years ago that actually related to some of the things that that Valerie raised, which is this longer history of thinking about artificial intelligence beyond the present, going back all the way to ancient times, mythology, and how some of these tropes that we are talking about now have been with us for a very, very, very long time. And in the study of these narratives, so my colleagues, including Stephen Cave, Kanta Dihal, but also Carrie McInerney and Eleanor Drage, identify some issues. And one of the issues that I think is very important to raise is the question of gender bias in these narratives. So they did a study, actually, I have the numbers here. They looked at the most influential Western films, so films watched by the largest number of viewers, etc. And so they identified 116 films that, according to their methodology, were influential, and only nine out of the 116, so only 8% of these films featured AI professionals that were male. And among these 9 professionals that were gendered male in the female, in the films, only one of them was a CEO. So this is just to say that this is actually worse than the reality of the industry, where the percentage of men in the AI workforce is at 78%. So this is the problem, one of the problems, one of the many biases that are perpetuated by these mainstream narratives, Hollywood-driven, very often influenced by the Silicon Valley narrative. So this is the problem, and I'm not thinking about solutions, potential solutions, or ways of intervening. I thought I would mention also another project that I was a part of more directly. The project was called Global AI Narratives, where we looked at how different cultures around the world perceive the risks and benefits of AI differently. And the strategy here is really to uncover different kinds of narratives, the kinds of narratives that are not part of the mainstream, and what we can do to help them to help them gain new audiences, how we can highlight these alternative narratives. So I worked on working with local specialists on Middle Eastern narratives, Middle Eastern and North African narratives, and also on Eastern European and Central European narratives, thinking about how the work, for example, by Stanisław Lem, could be made relevant to some of these conversations that we are having now in relation to AI. So this is something to say about fictional narratives, mainstream Hollywood narratives, but then moving on to something that is perhaps more related to what Tanya was already talking about, media representations or journalistic representations of AI. So Tanya already highlighted the issues, and honestly, the work that you've done with the most recent coverage of Gemini is fascinating. We have to talk more. It's scary, but thanks so much for doing this work already and reacting so quickly. So Tanya already mentioned her own guide that she developed with Kanta Dihal that introduces designers, I suppose, or illustrators to some of the problematic tropes in visual representations of AI at what we being, I suppose, illustrators, journalists, but also academics, what we can do differently to represent AI in a more accurate way. But I thought I would highlight some of the work that I'm doing in relation to this. I organized with Eleanor Drage a workshop a few months ago that gathered journalists, some representatives of NGOs, independent journalists, journalists from bigger media companies, where we discussed together what kind of guidelines already exist for journalists to report better and more responsibly on artificial intelligence, and how we, and this time by we, I mean primarily academics or the civil society, how we can help journalists do better. So what we can provide to them, or how we can empower them to do better. So this is to say, instead of naming and shaming problematic tropes or narratives, what we can do to empower journalists, and all kinds of journalists. So of course, a technology journalist or an investigative journalist might actually not require guidance on what metaphors to use. What they might be in need of is funding to do this critical work that is so difficult to do within the constraints of particular companies, media companies as well, partly because there is potential backlash from technology companies. So that's one of the things that we cover in the toolkit that is that I can send a link to via the chat later on. So we're trying to help journalists connect with organizations that can help them do this kind of critical job. On the one hand, on the other hand, it's also about introducing journalists to what AI is. So helping them develop a critical understanding of AI. So this is what the toolkit also covers. Anyway, I'll send you a link. I think it's a pretty straightforward toolkit, and we can talk about it more in questions. But just moving quickly, because I don't think we have so much time. Moving quickly to other types of representations, I thought I would highlight company-driven narratives, and I think this is something that Nadia covered in some ways already. And interesting. So I think when we think of narratives and company narratives and problematic narratives, on how we can, where we can intervene in this context, we primarily think of PR and marketing, which is a thing that we should think about and perhaps consider certain restrictions on overselling a product. So maybe some restrictions on what it is legal and ethical to advertise your product as. It might be that it's not doing what you're actually saying it is promising to do. So that's one area of intervention. But the other one that doesn't get enough coverage, I think, in this space is the question of UX writing. And in particular, when it comes to large language models and systems such as ChatGPT, it really becomes critical to think precisely in this way of how companies and systems create narratives by themselves. So there is a very good paper recently published on anthropomorphization of the language used by ChatGPT and potential alternatives, where maybe these systems should refer, well, maybe the system should be designed in a way that don't give the user the impression that they have a personality and identity, or they are or any kind of personhood. So that's another type of conversation and potential way of intervening. And finally, I mean, this is something that Valerie already mentioned to a degree, the question of academic representations and what we as academics, in particular in science fields that don't so often feel about the need and the ethics of communicating to the public, what we can do better to communicate more effectively, but also more ethically, because what we know is that very often the narratives that the journalists perpetuate actually stem from what academics do to simplify their work in a way that they believe will make it more digestible to the general public. So this comes down to science communication training, basically, as well. All right, I'll stop here because that's all kinds of areas and we want to leave some time for questions.
Yes, thank you also so much for your thoughts. And also this tool is what you were saying about empowering journalists also very much resonates with what Valerie was saying also about having education. Like we often don't have the tools to respond, and often we put in a reactive position actually. So thank you for all those ideas. And yeah, I would like to maybe open the floor from the for the audience to ask questions to our panelists. Please put them in the chat, and maybe we'll start just one question so people can have some time to think. Maybe I would like to also would like to ask like maybe to all of you like this representation of AI as a hype. Like I feel this is very present in the way we currently in the way AI is currently present in our media. So I was just thinking how maybe this hype is constructed, or how it manifests differently, and is actually useful to think like this AI anti-hype discourse, or so just thinking like, well, how should we be more critical of constructive about the AI as hype narrative, or also reality, basically.
Maybe I can start by responding. I mean, in a slightly provocative, I suppose, in this context way, to say that, I mean, we should critique the hype and various factors that oversell the technology that is available to us right now. But I would also want to highlight the dangers of not recognizing that these technologies are changing our society in a very fundamental way very quickly. And also recognizing that the systems that there isn't a consensus among actual computer scientists whether these systems could become conscious or not. I think on the humanities end of the spectrum, we tend to say, I mean, this is a crazy narrative perpetuated by irresponsible computer scientists, but actually, I mean, the community seems to be split 50-50. So this is not to say that I agree with either side, but rather to recognize that simplifications are dangerous, you know, both ways, basically. So saying that this is all hype, there is nothing new about this all has been done before, is also potentially very dangerous, including in how we communicate with the general public. So yeah, just a very quick response to the question of hype.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other thoughts about this, Tanya?
Yeah, I guess one of the first things to do is define what you mean by hype, and to kind of that I think helps me find my position on it. And it's we've just closed actually a call for papers for the Springer AI and Ethics Journal, where we specifically wanted to get academic, mainly academic, you know, and other kind of specialists to come from many different perspectives to think about what we do mean by hype, and also hype, because it's something that cuts through many different disciplines to understand. And the way that we defined it was the overinflation of AI capabilities and performance. So for me, I think that I can probably decouple that from a perspective of, you know, is this AI thing as scary as we think it is, by looking at specifically what capabilities are being discussed, how are they being represented, and how much of that is factual. And there are a lot of researchers who do spend time digging into some of the claims that are made. So quite a few claims that are made, you know, about how many, you know, how well ChatGPT passed the bar exam, or how many coders are now using AI, you know, all of these things. People do dig into them, and quite often there are misrepresentations in the ways that they're done. So another example is the TaskRabbit, I think it was, I can't remember which chatbot it was. I think it was ChatGPT fooled TaskRabbit into getting past reCAPTCHA by pretending it was disabled, and that became a big thing about, how deceitful AI can be. Again, if you dig into that, which someone has, there were more human prompts in there than that were reported. So I think a really key thing is to not be in that state of, because what has happened in the last few years, the last year particularly, has been so incredible. It is amazing. I am in no way denying that, but it kind of puts us in the place where we can almost believe anything, because what we've seen is so incredible. And so it's just needing to be particularly stringent on digging into, you see a headline, kind of then digging into, like, what has someone else said about this headline, and we need to do more research. So my feeling generally is that whether it's people that are scared of rogue AI, whether it's people that are scared of who gets in charge of the AI, whether it's people that are concerned about the harm that AI is doing right now, that needs to be grounded in in a proper articulation of what the current status is and what we know about the trajectory of the current status. And so I won't. I see we've got other questions, so I won't. I'm happy to talk to anyone about this offline, but we have a checklist of like 7 ways to spot AI hype, and it's kind of at various levels. And if you flip it, it's also ways to avoid AI hype when you're communicating.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. Like, because we do have some questions in the chat, so I will try to rephrase, like to pose them to all of you. So I think the first question is, I'd love to know more about your thoughts about the digital divide in AI, and this gap is widening over time. And how do you think we can solve the access to AI issue globally, and also how would it help with, for example, education or representation globally? The question by Sonia. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas or like to chip in on this. Yes.
Maybe I can start. So first, I was very sensitive to this idea of we should stop calling them chatbot, and using also this idea of the chat. The digital divide is a reality, and AI is not going to solve it. Coming back just for 1 second to what was previously mentioned about we face changes, and they are going very fast. Also, there are long-term perspectives that we can adapt. What I don't like in the idea of, for example, of revolution, in this idea is that it is very coming fast. It is brutal. We have no choice, and we have some choice and some roads that may open. We may slow down eventually, but not like Elon Musk asking for slowing down, because I'm not sure it was a very human-centered claim. But this idea of techno-solutionism and of revolution and of everything is a real problem. And we have to think about these digital gaps, but also the divides that the society may also face. You have a lot of people who are afraid of seeing their job disappearing and so on, and how to adapt. And it was already the case with the development of the computing, but it's a reality. And what is interesting is that it's no more only the low jobs or less paid job, but also you have film writers and so on who are also raising the issue. So there may be a digital divide. There may be also divides in society. And when I was talking about cognitive divide, we often see there will be the North and the South, and so those countries who already face the digital divide internationally, but within our societies, there are already real divides. And AI is quite difficult to understand. The claim, for example, for transparency in AI, okay, it's cool, but first to reproduce certain model, it's from an environmental point of view, a disaster, and it's absolutely unrealistic. But how do people go into this? So always this discourse of transparency, accountability, and so on. We had also this for net neutrality and so on. It's okay, it's fine. It gives a bit of transparency, but education will be key, and it's quite complex, and it will take time, and we are in a process that will be difficult. Second, don't forget that this digital divide is about access to technology, because a lot of these AI technologies, they also need recent materials, new computers with more they have, of course, an environmental cost, but there are also economic issues and some monopolies, for example, on GPU, and that's NVIDIA, if I'm right, or I don't know exactly, we'll check how to pronounce it, but was a kind of monopoly to train on big computers, this model, and so on. So we will also face eventually economic divides and and geopolitical issues. So this is, of course, and the question was how to fight this. And now it's time for the other speakers to provide solution, because I'm not sure I have some, but yeah.
Does anyone have any solutions or other thoughts on this question? I would like to. Thomas?
Just very quickly, I mean, the question of the digital divide is a complex one, and we can talk about you know, who gets to create AI systems, but thinking a little more about who gets to use AI systems, I think we have to start even, I mean, this is interesting because we tend to immediately, when we're having these discussions, for example, in the UK or the US, we start thinking of countries that are considered developing still or underdeveloped. Even some of these terms are used to describe certain regions, etc. But what the pandemic revealed was that we have these issues even in places such as the UK or the US, where we all of a sudden, it was revealed to us as a society that there are huge portions of our societies that don't have access to the internet, that don't have a laptop or a computer at their home, and this includes young people. So just a very quick response to this, and the reason why I'm mentioning it, I'm trying to access the chat. I somehow lost it, but I worked on a project at the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard during the pandemic that was actually trying to uncover how precisely this question, how it was sort of unfolding during the pandemic. So I'll post it in the chat, a link to a report based on that project, and that includes some good resources on the digital divide in different parts of the world. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for these replies. One more question from Saima. So the question is about human-computer interaction and user interface design. So for Tom or Nadia, but also actually for everyone who would like to reply. So what are the uses of AI prototyping, or maybe AI in general, or where else can we use them to take humanity forward? So what are maybe domains where AI is not applied yet, or where would you like to go? Think there would be good applications that are not currently there from a user interface perspective.
Nadia, do you want to take this one? Or
get the question. Is it like where we feel AI could be meaningfully used, like in UX?
I think that's how I would understand the question. Oh,
I mean, one thing that I'm like shocked we're not seeing as much of yet is well, two things. Again, one is like adaptive interfaces, which would be really hard to design, but if we could do it well, that would be really cool. So like, you know, AI being able to sort of adapt in real time interfaces to serve better, like for, I don't know, anyone with like special needs, but also just like the context of the time of day, like, you know, where am I? Like, who am I with? Things like that, which I really thought like 10 years ago, you know, I was thinking about this and I'm like, this is definitely gonna happen. And I haven't really seen it happen that much. I think it is like so complex to design for it. But I think it's really interesting space, like adaptive interfaces. And another one that I think is interesting, but it's much more in like the generative age, and also maybe like arts and you know, creative space, sort of like adaptive storylines or like real time, you know, generative co-created storylines, like with users or viewers. So things like, I don't know if people remember like Bandersnatch, you know, from Netflix, which was like this where you could, you know, sort of choose your own adventure. You know, that was like one version, but now that we have like generative AI and it can do moving images, you know, this is problematic in some other ways, but in terms of storytelling, I think that could be so interesting. And really bring like new ways of storytelling and like media. And a similar thing with, I don't know, like could also be applicable in education, but even simple thing like, I don't know, but if like you have a kid and like you can make in real time like a new, you know, Peppa Pig episode that relates to something they experienced that day, you know, and like, I don't know, things like this where it's like really like dynamic media, and using that in a way that, you know, feels good, not exploitative. I think there's many ways in which it fits for, yeah, like educational storytelling. So I think that's an interesting area as well. A bit outside UX, but you know, design still. But yeah, those are a few things that come up for me. I don't know, Tom, if you have any other areas you're thinking about. Oh, and one, I would like to also do one that I really would not like to see. I saw one the other day. Sorry, I'm going to like, I hope I don't step on someone's toes, but like user research without the users. No, don't do that. It's a real product. I was like, this is completely missing the point. So there's also lots of areas in which I think we shouldn't bring it. Yeah, it can help us, you know, help with the user research, but user research without the users, no. Okay, Tom, what do you your part?
Yes. Tom, do you have any concluding thoughts on this question?
Just one sentence really from the point of like, you know, the point of view of like design theory. I would say that I mean, we might think of beneficial applications of artificial intelligence, and that's definitely something we should be thinking about. But we should reframe this question and think about, you know, a problem first that we experience as a society or a particular group in society is experiencing, and then think about potential solutions. And if it so happens that machine learning can help with solving that problem, then that's great. But this is the way we should be thinking about development rather than the other way around. So being excited about a particular type of technology and then trying to find an application for it is, I think, yeah, doing it sort of in reverse. Yeah, which is partly what the hype is kind of pointing us towards. Just adopt the technology as quickly as possible and wherever. So yeah, just a quick response. Thanks.
Thank you. I totally agree.
What's that classic quote of like to someone holding a hammer, everything's a nail? You know, yeah.
And I think, sorry, I'm going to jump in because I've seen Ned's question, and I know we're short on time, just to say that is also very relevant for the answer to that question. So OpenAI's mission is to make AGI, and as we've seen in what's happened in the last couple of weeks, the commercial aspect of that mission has kind of won over the kind of the non-commercial version, and so it's absolutely in OpenAI's interest to tell us that AGI is inevitable, B, tell us that they're the ones that can define it and have cracked it, and you know, all of that then leads into like them being involved in the regulation of it. So I think the key thing I'd say about, you know, what do I think about AGI is, first of all, there is no agreed term for what that means. OpenAI have created their own term for AGI. If you go back to, you know, the 1960s or whatever, there'll be other terms. People use it in different ways. So it's, as Thomas said earlier, it's hotly contested as to whether LLMs and the current state, you know, will or won't ever lead to AGI. But when people say that, some of them mean sentience, some of them mean conscience, some of them mean, you know, a mind, some of them mean reasoning, you know, so you can create your own definition. And obviously OpenAI are in a very strong position to create that, but it may not mean what all the people that are worrying about it think it means. I think the question would be, the question I think it's really important to ask is to question the word that you use, which is inevitable. It's like, do we want this? And if it's being presented as inevitable, it reduces our chance and you know, is defined, it reduces our chance to kind of say, I don't know what it is, but do we want it, and who are we, and who do we want to be creating it, and who do we want to be regulating it? So I kind of think I would say the first, you know, the question that you've put, how might we better prepare for it? I think my answer is like, well, first of all, let's not accept it's inevitable. Let's not accept it's beneficial. But also, let's not accept that we all know what that even means. Let's talk more.
Thank you so much. I think this is an excellent. Or Valerie, would you like to have some conclusion?
Yeah, I just wanted to react also to this question related to AGI. When you look at the website and the discourse, which is, it has the potential to give everyone incredible new capacities, increasing abundance, turbocharging the global economy, and it's exactly techno-solutionism. It doesn't work, we know it. And we could say, okay, they have a lot of humor. It's funny because it looks so like a parody, a caricature, but it's not. And they are driving, or they want us to believe they will drive the world, and we should. They are cynical. When you see this, of course, they are saying, okay, there may be some risk and so on. But I really think when the question is what kind of narrative will be helpful in preparing for AGI, to have counter discourses, I would say, and to talk about human-centered artificial intelligence, responsible artificial intelligence, but not about this kind of discourse, which is serving companies and techno profits and so on. And I disagree totally with this kind of motto. They are dangerous, I guess.
No, yes, I also agree. And it also shows the power of narrative, and also who controls the narrative when we talk about AI, and also how can we contest those narratives. And I'm sorry, I will have to end this session here. I'm really enjoying the conversation, actually. But I would like to thank Tanya, Valerie, and Nadia, and Tom again for all your contributions and your great ideas you shown here in this seminar. Yes, thank you so much.